Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the VMV A2 power amplifier, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Apos Audio for providing the VMV A2 for review. Do greatly appreciate Apos Audio, you rock. All right, so the VMV A2, this is a speaker amplifier, a power amplifier. This is something that I have very little experience with. Speakers, as you can see them behind me, are not something that I have a lot of experience with. Now, I've heard a lot of speakers, but I have only owned 4 pairs. And those are the Kanto Yumis, which are powered speaker, the Monoprice MM5Rs, which are a powered speaker, and then the Sony SSCS5s, I think is the model number, C5S, I don't know, Sony has extremely weird model numbers. And then the Wharfedale D310s that you see directly behind me. And both the Sonys and the Wharfedales are 8 ohms, and then the Monoprices and Kantos are powered. So the Wharfedales and the Sonys take a little bit of oomph to power them, and the other amplifiers that I've had in-house, which are the Mica Oragain and the PS Audio Sprout Gen 1s, neither one of those really have a whole lot of power for 8 ohm speakers. So when I got the VMV A2 sent in, I noticed something significantly different, and we'll talk about that. And please keep in mind that I'm very inexperienced when it comes to speakers and speaker amplifiers. This is actually the first official true speaker amplifier that I've had. All the others have been some sort of integrated. So this is a new experience for me. And I am very much a noob, and I will admit that, when it comes to speakers. All right, so the A2, let's talk about some specs real quick. This is 200 watts of output power. It has EQs built in, has a DAC inside it, has Bluetooth, has a subwoofer pre-out, and does all kinds of other incredible things. I will not be able to plug this in and show the menu on it, but it does have a nice screen on it and a menu that you can control with your remote control, which is actually very responsive and extremely intuitive and very easy to use. Or you can control it with the multifunction volume knob and the little selectors. The back side of it, you have all your inputs, and you only have one output, and that's the speaker outs. And they are the binding posts, of course. You have your Bluetooth inputs, and then all sorts of other inputs here on the back side. And you have RCA in, optical, Bluetooth, AES, coaxial, and USB. And then it has SNR of 115 decibels. Channel separation is 108 decibels. As I said, it's 200 watts at 4 ohms and 100 watts at 8 ohms. And the USB connection is asynchronous, if that matters to you. It does PCM all the way up to 768 kilohertz. Does DSD up to 25.5792 millihertz, and it does all kinds of other things, all kinds of connections and inputs. This thing is fantastic with Bluetooth, and it has all sorts of connections there. The codecs, UAT, LDAC, aptX HD, aptX, SBC, AAC, pretty much anything you want, it's going to be inside the A2 as far as connections. On the menus, you're able to control preset EQ. You're also able to adjust EQ with bass, mids, and treble. And then you can also adjust your sub gain. You can adjust the actual output gain from low, mids, and high. And you can change several other different settings within the menu. This thing is fully loaded and very user-friendly. I had no problems figuring out exactly what all I was looking at on the screens and being able to determine how I wanted to set it up. As far as the preset EQs, there's very plentiful of them. I can't remember the exact amount of them, but there's ones that are direct, which is basically like bit perfect, and then you have clear, which is kind of like bit perfect, but with a little bit of a clarity added in and a little bit of elevation in the upper mids and treble, and you kind of get a little bit more space and separation. And then there's one with tone where it kind of adds in a bottom end, adds in a little bit of like flavor for warmth, and kind of tames down the top end a little bit. And then there's clear, and there's bassy, and all kinds of other flavors, whichever way you want. There's a treble tilted one, all sorts of EQs, which are interesting. I left it on direct because I like to listen to things as bit perfect. Weighs about 6 pounds. It's kind of hefty. It's about 10 by 10. It takes up a lot of space on the desk. It's not small. You do have these removable little spiky bottom feet that you can use, or you can. It also included some sort of little rubber feet that you can put on there, whichever you want to use. And overall, I just find it appealing to look at on the desk. Even though it's large, it's a pretty nice looking little device. And it's not ugly by any means, but it's not something that's going to just like stand out and everybody's going to be using it as a centerpiece either. It's just kind of a workable looking device. Overall, I'm very pleased with the user experience. As I said, I'm very inexperienced when it comes to speakers, speaker amplifiers, power amplifiers, speakers in general. And so I was able to just pick this thing up, plug it in, and start listening to music immediately. Now, how does it sound? First, using the DAC inside it, and then we'll talk about some of the other DACs that I used, and we'll compare it to the Sprout and to the Orgain. The DAC inside it has a very natural and neutral sound signature. And it's a very clean, very detailed, and extremely good at resolution. You are immediately impacted by the amount of information that is presented, and also in the way that it is presented in a very approachable, natural way. It's not blaring in your ears and just blasting away, force feeding you details. It's giving it to you in a way that makes it sound realistic and accurate and true, which is the way I really enjoy music to be presented. When I'm listening on the Wharfdales and the Sonys, both of them are very neutral leaning speaker and a very clean, very well detailed and resolving speaker. And so the A2 presents the music in that regard. You get all the information and everything sounds accurate in placement. Moving across the stage, you get really good depth and layering, especially with the Wharfdales. And I find that they are just a real good with imaging and placement, especially with the A2. Everything, it just moves and travels across, and you can place it and dissect the stage very well. And then the details of the airiness and the separation of the instruments and the vocalists is just very clean, clear, and you can just like nitpick and pull things apart. With the Sonys, you can do that as well. Sonys are a little bit more elevated and a little bit more treble tilted than the Wharfdale. And they lack a little bit of the note weight and body that the Wharfdales have. The Wharfdales are a little bit more natural sounding when it comes to tone and timbre. Sonys tend to be just a little bit on the more metallic side, I would say. And they have just a twinge of extra that it sounds a little bit unnatural on the Sonys versus the Wharfdales. And I found that overall, everything just sounds precise and realistic with the A2's DAC. It's just a very clean, very neutral sounding. Nothing is really elevated. It just sounds like it should be naturally placed without extra colorization unless you use their EQs. When I input other DACs, when I inputted the Mytek Liberty, I found that the A2 sounded very similar to the internal DAC. The only difference was that the separation and the placement of instruments became a little bit more defined. It was just slightly more defined with the Mytek as the DAC versus the internal DAC. The airiness and the separation was what was the most noticeable. Also a little bit more accurate tone and timbre. Moving into the Deckard from Aueze, the Deckard had a warmer, more lush sound. You still got good airiness and a nice separation. Detail retrieval and resolution wasn't quite what it was with the A2 and with the Mytek Liberty, but it was a very pleasing sound, and it was a little bit more robust, had a little bit more fun factor to it. Putting on the PS Audio Sprout Gen 1, the Sprout was a little bit more warm, had a little bit more natural sound to things, but it also was a little more compressed, and the soundstage wasn't quite as wide and wasn't quite as deep on the stage, but it still did a really good job with detail retrieval and resolution. Overall, I found that all of the DACs, along with the A2 and different speakers, just sounded amazing. Comparing it to the Gen 1 Sprout, it just doesn't have the same, it just has more power than the Sprout. The Sprout just isn't able to perform and drive the Wharfedales or the Sonys the same way as the VMV. The VMV has double the power for 8-ohm speakers, which both the Wharfedales and the Sonys are. Same thing with Mica Orgain. The Mica Orgain was a step below all of the others. It just has a little bit less of a soundstage. It was a little bit more warm, a little bit more thumpy sounding, a little bit more fun sounding, but it just lacks a little bit in detail retrieval and resolution compared to all the other DACs and amplifiers, and it just wasn't able to really drive the Wharfedales and the Sonys like the VMV A2 can. Overall, I really like the VMV A2. I think it's solidly built, it's attractive looking, does take up a lot of space, and it has a pricey, hefty price tag of $1,000. I'm not a speaker person. I have no idea if this is a good deal or not, but to me, this makes my Wharfedales and Sonys come alive, it makes them enjoyable, and it's really what I want to hear from them. So is $1,000 good enough for me? I'll have to think about that. Really wish I could keep the VMV A2. I really do not want to send it back to Apos. Can I recommend it to you? Only if you're looking for the sound signature that I described, and if you think $1,000 is worthy of it. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links, notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Then don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video. And also check out the links down below for an affiliate link to Apos Audio where you can purchase the VMV A2. And please keep in mind that Apos Audio only asked for an honest review of the VMV A2. They did not influence this video in any way other than asking for my honest opinion. Also, there'll be other links down there for music that was used during the review, gear tier lists, and all kinds of other information regarding recommended gear and how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel, all kinds of good stuff down below. So check out the links down below. And don't forget to enjoy the music. And remember, honesty is the best policy.